Hello there and welcome to my top 5 yay and nay list for the first 3 seasons of The Dragon Prince. With season 3 out for almost 3 years and season 4 finally coming up later this year, what better time is there to take a look back at the show so far and point out some of its strengths and weaknesses. Given how long the available seasons have been out by now, for once I will not bother avoiding spoilers. If you haven't seen the show yet and just want to know if it's worth your time, yes, totally! I love this show and wholeheartedly recommend checking it out. And with only 9 hours total runtime to date, you can binge it within a day or two. For everyone who is up to date, let's go! Number 5. Neigh! The Kronked Up Timeline. The later seasons of Game of Thrones have been infamous for how entire armies develop the ability to zap from one end of the continent to the other and back within a fortnight. Something unthinkable in earlier seasons where the showrunner still had the books to tell them how long and challenging a trip would actually be. From what we can observe, sadly the Dragon Prince seems to have a similar Gallifreyan attitude to time and space. After 2 seasons worth of traveling towards Xadia, Ezran is able to return to Catolis from one episode to the next, only to then catch back up with Team Zim right when they reach their journey's destination, the Stormspire. Okay, admittedly, Ezran had the advantage of air travel and he literally rode his mount to temporary death to achieve this. But the same excuse cannot be made for Viren's army, who left Catolis shortly after Ezran, had some misadventures in Luxaria, and still managed to arrive seemingly just a few days later at the Stormspire. And this is even more overshadowed by the arrival of the united forces of Durin and the bands of helpful side characters who had some additional mileage to cover. And all this is not helped by the fact that the story so far, plus the follow-up graphic novel Through the Moon, canonically take place in not more than 2 months.
By all accounts, it doesn't make sense.
To be fair, much of this can be explained with plotlines not being shown in correct chronological order to each other and off-screen resting and/or travel days for the individual groups. Therefore, only number 5 nay. Number 5. Yay! Diversity. The show takes place in a completely original fantasy world and takes full advantage of this by creating the most fantastical thing imaginable. A world in which characters of different skin colors, sexual orientations, identity and with disabilities just are a regular part of the scenery and nobody makes a big deal about it. As if it is just, normal. Brilliantly ridiculous. Joking aside, I am very happy with this positive representation that just subtly works towards destigmatization of minorities, like Amaya, a deaf character in a big supporting role and one of the most badass fighters of the show. And they went the extra mile to have her communicate in American Sign Language so accurate and clear that it can be translated by viewers who understand it. So why only number 5 yay? For one, this should not be a big deal anymore. And The Dragon Prince is by far not the only media who has caught on to this by now. But I also noticed that the first 2 established gay couples, as well as King Harrow, suffer a tragic, if not outright deadly fate. Given the low death/fate worse than death count of significant characters, that kinda stood out to me. And while racism doesn't seem to be an issue, they have rampant speciesism between humans and Xadians. I don't want to call these more than red flags just yet, but it sure didn't help this yay to rank higher on this list. Now for one of the most infamous issues of the show, and yet it only made it to number 4. Neigh! The 3D. The worst part of it by far is for sure these scenes where the frame rate drops so low you can literally count the frames per second with your bare eyes. From what I've been told, this was less of a resource related issue but rather an intentional artistic decision, doing what Into the Spider-Verse and Rise of the TMNT did. But what gave a certain something to those media made the animation in The Dragon Prince look choppy, low quality and unfinished. Thankfully, this issue is mostly related to low action scenes during the first season, but it certainly doesn't help anybody who is already critical of 3D animated shows to get into this one. And I will not deny that it takes some getting used to, especially if you haven't watched many shows using similar 3D already. But once you have gotten over it, you can appreciate number 4, yay! The animation and art direction. As I just admitted, it clearly has its flaws, but the overall visuals, including the 3D which keeps improving with each season, can look absolutely stunning. I guess this is as far as I can make it into this video without mentioning Avatar: The Last Airbender and the science of Aaron Asa's handiwork. For those not aware, one of the two creators and head writers of The Dragon Prince, Aaron Ahas, was also head writer and co-executive producer of Avatar, and the similarities between the shows caused by this are undeniable. One of the areas where it becomes notable is the art direction, which makes this original fantasy world shine brightly and enhances the overall watching experience. Rayla's smooth acrobatics easily make up for the occasional choppy walk cycle. Yeah, this throne room looks a bit uncrowned, but have you seen this panoramic view? And to bring back Amaya's sign language once more, I'm pretty sure making it as crisp as it turned out was in large part helped by having a character puppet running through the motions rather than animating all these gestures one by one in detail traditionally. At the end of the day, The Dragon Prince is easily one of the better looking, higher quality 3D shows out there and can easily rival many traditionally animated shows in regards to overall appearance. But enough about surface level aspects like visuals and surprisingly inconsequential skin colors. What about the writing? Number 3.
Neigh!
Lord Viren, or the failed attempt at a nuanced villain. I have the suspicion that one aspect where Aaron wanted to improve The Dragon Prince compared to his previous work on Avatar is the approach to the show's first main villain. In The Last Airbender, Lord Ozai was unapologetically evil, literally earth-scorching, child-abusing, and voiced by none other than the Joker himself. Compared to that, Lord Viren appears a lot more balanced in the beginning. Just like Ozai, he's a single dad of 2 children, but besides being a bit weird and full of themselves, they seem pretty well adjusted, especially compared to Zuko and Azula. Viren himself is a good friend and advisor to King Harrow, and while he seems to be clearly less of a virtuous good guy than his king, after some inner struggle he is willing to go as far as sacrifice his own life in exchange for Harrow's. 4 episodes later, he orders his himbo-in-the-making son to hunt down and murder children. Damn it, Aaron! You had such a promising start! Well, from here on out, Viren is on a straight path to mustache-twirlingly evil, casually holding an innocent ally as a personal prisoner in his private dungeon, sending magical assassins after the other human leaders to kick off the open war they refuse to support, all culminating in him going on a magical killing spree against soldiers of his own nation when resisting arrest for treason. To be honest, transforming an entire army without their consent into feral abominations almost seems tame after the cold-blooded murders. And of course, through all this, he sees himself as a hero fighting for a noble cause.
I wish for humanity to flourish.
Except the ones who are dead.
What makes all of this so painful is that Viren's story could potentially have worked. I mean, after all, what we have here is a basic corruption arc. Ambitious guy with good intentions but shaky morals gets manipulated by evil puppeteer into villainy. Sadly, they missed the mark on that one. Viren was already willing to have the princess murdered before ever meeting Erebos. And then they jumped the shark when he became sheared on Commander-in-Chief days after brutally killing guards in front of their colleagues. Maybe, just maybe, this bounce back could have been believable if Viren was established as extraordinarily cunning or super well connected. But as it stands, it's just plot armor. He became king because that's what needed to happen, so we still have our current lead villain to move the plot forward. It is such a shame to see this character, who started out seemingly complex, quickly turning into this one-dimensional bad guy with motivations so weak, even the show itself seems to make fun of it.
Is your wish to rule, Zadia?
I wish for humanity to flourish, and it cannot flourish with a knife forever at its throat.
So, you wish to conquer Zadia?
No. No. My goal is a bright future for humanity.
Right.
What a train wreck. But besides this specific weakness, the writing of the show is actually really good. Especially number 3!
Yay!
The organic development of our main characters and their relationships. What I mean by that is events which the writers adapted as the story unfolded in front of them, and where they changed entire story arcs if it felt necessary to stay true to the characters as they have developed up to that point. One example. According to Polygon, Ezran was originally not supposed to split from Team Zim in order to take up his duties as the new king at the end of the second season. Yet, when the writers got there, they felt that this would be necessary. So, Ezran returns home with Corvus, has his entire solo story arc at the beginning of Season 3, and eventually causes the biggest contribution to the aforementioned Kronked Up Timeline. That is some commitment to natural character growth, I tell ya. You wanna know another drastic change they only introduced during storyboarding for Season 2? Up to that point, Rayla and Callum were not meant to end up together at all.
Say what?
I know, right? Fans have probably been shipping them since the moment they first met, and while some members in the writing room probably thought about it earlier as well, the two of them were primarily meant to be close friends rather than love interests for each other. And if you ask me, their relationship is better for it. Being friends first and only developing stronger romantic feelings for each other over time as you get to know each other is actually how the strongest and healthiest relationships in real life come to be. And the result of this is a love story so much better than any OTP falling for each other on first sight pulp. The only concern I have right now is that the showrunners feel the need to introduce some drama into the relationship to keep it exciting for, what was it, 4 more seasons?
6 seasons and a movie!
So yeah, let's hope they don't Korra up the relationship with love triangles, breakups and idiotic nonsense like amnesia that makes characters forget their current relationship status. But for the time being, I will remain cautiously optimistic and enjoy one of the better love stories in ongoing media out there. Something that really helps getting over. Number 2.
Neigh!
Immersion breaking world building. You know what I mean. When a show introduces something so weird, you go, wait, what? That's silly. Revelations like the ones that the Dragon Prince unloads onto the viewers in the very beginning. Maybe to get it out of the way quickly so that the story can start from there before any immersion has even built up. So what am I talking about? First, there's this backstory that the dragons and elves simply kicked all the humans out, and this caused the entire continent to be neatly split into a magical eastern half, where absolutely everything from the flora to the fauna to the dirt of the ground is magical. And a completely magic-free western half, ignoring all mythical creatures still living there and magical locations like the Moon Nexus, mind you. So, how exactly did this split go down? Did the relocation go both ways and the elves took all their magical dirt with them when leaving the West? Or was this hard split into a magical and non-magical half always a natural part of the continent? If so, how did the non-magical humans happen to live in the East in the first place, and how does the Moon Nexus being located in the West fit into that? Or are we building up to some environmental message that the evil humans drained the entire western half of all their natural magic? Even so, the use of dark magic doesn't seem to be very far spread. And on the note of magic, okay, so we got 6 elements called Arcanums this time around. Totally different from water, earth, fire and wind in Avatar. Except that ocean, earth, sun and sky are basically exactly that. And between sun, sky, moon and stars, 4 of the 6 elements are all sky themed. Admittedly, this last one is not really that immersion breaking, and I love what they eventually do with this setup. But I recall vividly that it struck me as pretty silly the initial time around and didn't help my first impression. But I guess the biggest example I have that only crept up to me over time. In all of that world's history involving all the humans' research into Arcanums, we are to believe that Callum, a random kid who tried out magic for the first time like 2 weeks prior, is the first and only human ever to have an epiphany about any of the Arcanums that allowed him to wield magic without a primal stone? This is just very hard to buy. Compare this to how Toph discovered metal bending. She is established to be an earthbending genius. Because she uses bending to see, she has a superior earth sense to basically any other bender, and it took her to be locked into a tiny metal cage with nothing else to do but finding the earth particles in the metal to discover metal bending. And in the beginning it was very rough and basic, and only training helped her to turn it into an elegant and versatile skill. Metal bending is introduced as a natural extension to an already existing ability which requires a very special practitioner to discover. Wide-eyed boy who really wants to be magical doesn't come across as convincing. And yet, here I am eagerly waiting for Callum to discover his next arcanum in Season 4. Fingers crossed. While we are comparing the Dragon Prince to Avatar, number 2... Yay. An epic journey on par with Aang's. I am well known to be a sucker for ongoing story arcs, and nothing says big continuous plot like a grand journey across the entire world with an important mission like stopping a war. Now, this type of story is of course nothing unique, but with its small cast of young heroes in over their head, an ever-growing fantastical world to explore and plenty internal and external conflicts and challenges to overcome, the Dragon Prince, just like The Last Airbender before it, creates an immersive, exciting adventure that has the potential to leave a profound impact on its audience and culture as a whole. And given that it already has its own board game, tabletop RPG and supplemental media like comics and books, I dare to say it's already on the right track. Some folks even call the Dragon Prince the true spirited successor of The Last Airbender over Legend of Korra. And I think I agree with that statement. Aang's Team Avatar was nearly always in motion. They were hunted underdogs with the odds stacked against them, and they constantly discovered new locations, folks and creatures. All of these aspects had been lessened in the sequel series. But watching the Dragon Prince feels a lot like it used to with The Last Airbender. If you ask me, assuming the writers have a solid plan for the rest of the series, and it seems like they have, given that they already announced a total of 7 seasons with 1 per arcanum and then 1 extra, dark magic I assume, the biggest risk the show is running into at this point is number 1. Neigh! Badly executed key moments. Let me give you one example very early on that makes me cringe to this day when I rewatch it. The confrontation with Amaya outside the Bantha Lodge. This scene fulfills a lot of purposes. It lets Amaya know that the princes are still alive, which allows her to prevent Viren's premature coronation shortly after. It is the reason why Corvus gets sent after Team Zim. And last but not least, it causes some interpersonal conflict, such as Callum facing the aftermath of his speciesist remarks about elves and Rayla confronting her fear of water. Brilliant key moment on paper, but the scene itself was so badly done that I was convinced that Amaya must have realized that the kidnapping was fake and that she let the kids escape on purpose. I mean, Callum's lie was super unconvincing, Rayla leaves her guard completely open after they escape the gunpoint situation, and the princes are very obviously cooperating with their, quote, kidnapper. Amaya would be a complete idiot not to catch on to that. But no, by the time when Corvus attacked Rayla and demanded she let the princess go, it hit me. He, and therefore Amaya, really believed the kidnapping lie. But outside of this scene, both of them are presented as highly competent characters, which places the blame not on them, but on the writing itself. And I have plenty more examples of scenes which are highly relevant for the plot, but are flawed in their execution, like the entire scene on the frozen lake. Why did you stand up, Callum? You got it correct before! And is this really the right moment for a long-winded confession, Rayla? The cracking of the ice is literally audible during your speech. But wait, there's more! How did Viren get the egg and the mirror back home if it was just him and Harrow with 2 horses in enemy territory? And boy oh boy, Team Zim is really lucky that Callum just became the first human ever to master magic, specifically the Sky Arcanum, or else simply showing them the rune to survive would have been pretty pointless and everybody but Zim himself would have died during their ascent of the Storm Spire. At this point I can't even get appropriately annoyed at the tart-throwing baker in the middle of a war scene seconds after a named character got executed on screen. I know, No media is perfect, and some weak moments cannot ruin an otherwise great show. But The Dragon Prince seems to struggle a bit more with those than other shows of similar levels of care and competency as seen in number 1, Rayla. And, well, most other noteworthy characters besides Viren, their development and their relationship. We have our two princes who grow from sheltered, insecure children into a courageous mage and a king respectively. And Rayla, whose conviction to do the right thing gets constantly tested when one trauma after another gets thrown in her face. But this care is not just limited to the main cast. Take Soren's arc from nerd-bullying jock stereotype to developing a conscience and eventually turning full good guy hero. Or Claudia, who by the end of season 3 has already outdone her dad 10 times over as a convincing nuanced villain, complete with her own tragic backstory we got to witness unfold ourselves. There's a Maya who moves from seeing elves as just the enemy to developing respect and later even affection for Janai. And I could go on. Combine this with pretty damn good voice acting and you have a solid foundation that helps the rest of the show click and more than makes up for the mentioned shortcomings. And with an ever-growing cast, so grows the number of characters to fall in love with. I can't wait to see what comes next for all of them. And thankfully it looks like the show will be given the time it needs to finish telling their story. Leaves me to hope that they bring us more of the yays and less of the nays. Until next time.